Morning, everyone. My name is Subi, as you know. Okay. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for coming through. I don't know what traffic was like for you guys, but thank you so much. I'm here to talk to you guys about nurturing creativity for you and for us. And I know that might seem a bit strange, but I come up with like phrases that I use all the time. Okay, so basically, I'm a freelance children's book illustrator, picture book artist, designer, character designer, all that stuff. But I mainly work in picture books. And through freelancing, I don't know how many of you guys here are freelancers, but the world of freelancing is so interesting that I was like, look, let me start off by telling you guys about the things that I've learned and the cornerstones that I think are very, very important. So firstly, I feel like getting to freelancing, because it's a dog eats dog type of world almost, you need to announce yourself, announce your future self, if not to other people, but for yourself. Like just back yourself, as the young people would say. And also understand that it's going to be difficult. Everything in life is difficult. Most things are difficult, and especially if it's going to be worth your while, you're going to go through the mud. You're going to go through all sorts of twists and turns, all sorts of unlearning and relearning. And it's very important to just accept that, look, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to go into this battlefield, it's going to be difficult. And you should enjoy it, because you could be going through something difficult that you don't enjoy at all. And also, of course, finding mentors, which I think is extremely important, because for myself, I was lucky enough to find a bunch of people at this academy as well that showed a beautiful example on how to carry yourself as a creative in the industry, and also freelance, and also be cool, and also be approachable. And I think specifically as a younger person, you want to see people that make you say, oh, that person's actually cool, and I want to be a little bit like them in some way. And of course, be kind to yourself, be proud of yourself, yada, yada, yada. Things get difficult, but it's important that we always be kind to each other, and give each other grace for the difficult stuff that we go through. And again, like the last one here, which is about a plant doesn't grow without assistance. It's mainly because I feel like, I'm sure all of us know about some creative people or non-creative that mention how they came from nothing. They were all alone, coming up with all this wonderful stuff. And there's no way, like everybody has people that you lean on. There's somebody that gave you some sort of inspiration, someone that handled some financial thing for you. There's somebody who provided a meal, someone who did. And I think it's important to, if I stick to the theme of blooming, plants need all kinds of things to grow. And with your creativity and all that, it's important to understand that you need to lean and rely on all the people that are around you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about myself now. Growing up, I drew pictures all the time. I definitely put in the 10,000 hours. Just all the time. And it was only in high school, when I hit grade 10, where it's time to now choose your subjects. That's when I stopped drawing, because now I had to do mathematics. My mom was a computer science professor. So she was definitely look, do math and science, and then maybe do some art as well, just to make yourself happy. So I had to endure the math and science, which I only became proficient in at grade 11, which I guess. But yeah, I definitely did. I drew all the time, and I knew lots of other people who drew all the time, but there was a part of life where we took a nice long break, which was probably, obviously you have to learn your journey. Some people manage to keep with the art and they are thriving now, which I'm very proud of, but I unfortunately didn't, and I just took a long break. And then I studied architecture, and it was really heartbreaking. If I just sum it all up, I don't know if there's any architects here? No. Okay. Good. It's a heartbreaking career, I promise you. But then while I was doing that, I found space to say, let me try and do some sort of freelancing thing, find some sort of service. I found all these online services, and I just decided, look, I know how to draw in a cute way. I know how to draw things for kids, things that are like for younger people, things that are like whimsical. And it's not really because of a passion. And I know that this might be like a thing that kind of maybe seems odd, but lots of people talk about doing your passion, and if that's your work, then you're not working at all. But I think it's more precise to say, if it's something that it's a gift that you already just naturally are able to do, and you don't take it as an all-encompassing part of your life, and then you find a way to exploit that, then you can have like a career, because you won't like hang your whole life on it, if that makes sense. So I took that approach, and after leaving architecture, came here to study graphic design at ADA, which and I know Kai's right there, thank you. But like, this has been the greatest school that I've been to, because it's the first academy where I actually got to experience like a nurturing community that encourages you to go through what you're going through, work at your own pace, but also, of course, with the strict deadlines. And again, most specifically, being able to see examples of the staff that are in the creative community, practicing as designers and illustrators, etc. And see just literally how cool they are, and how approachable they are, and how personable they are. And it made me feel like, okay, I can be like this, because I can see it now. And I learned so many things about specifically like a studio setup and the scope of the world that I could find as an illustrator. And basically accessing a bigger market in illustration. Okay, I'm going to show you some of my work. But basically, I started I started self-publishing illustrations, books, by illustrating them on services like Upwork and Freelancer and People Per Hour. I don't know if you guys know about that. And I'm forgetting this other one. But yeah, I would work with people just like through advertising myself on Instagram, Facebook, etc. And then I'd get some sort of DM, and then we'd work through it, and then I'd work on this book with this person. And in a sense, I would take up all the roles of the designer and the editor, and I learned lots of stuff along the way. It was very strange, because you'd encounter some people who, I'll never forget, there was this one lady who, her father was a retired, fighter pilot. And he was now working as a photographer, and he produced all sorts of beautiful landscapes of like, I guess, the landscape. And now, there was a time where we were working on this book, and I was like, she was mentioning that, yeah, maybe we can change how, like, the template or whatever. And I was like, okay, look, we could maybe make it a landscape format. It doesn't have to be portrait. And she looked at me, yeah, we had a Zoom call. She looked at me and she was like, what's landscape? And I was truly like, that was like one of the few times where I was like, what's going on here? How do you not know what a landscape is? And granted, that might be like, it might seem like privileged information, but it can't be. But that's what I was dealing with, where I was like, you obviously know about landscapes, but now you're telling me that you don't. That's fine. Those are some of the things that I had to deal with. But through that experience working in just like online specifically, I would eventually get a bunch of I guess coverage through websites and stuff. There would be some blog posts that would post some sort of feature on some of the work that I did, which I'm very grateful for. And Pan Macmillan, South Africa, reached out to me, and we worked on a couple books. And after that, I'd learned through being at ADA that there's obviously the bigger market, which is the international market. And to access that, I needed to get representation. I needed to get some sort of agent who could be on my side and manage my work and find people and say, look, this guy does this. So it takes like on average about 3 years, unless you're already like exquisite at what you do. And I think most people, even though they think they are exquisite, sometimes like you don't find the right fit of representation to say, okay, look, I know exactly who we can sell this work to. Come through, sign the contract, let me help you fine-tune your portfolio. So I had to go through that. It took like about 3 years, and then eventually the Bright Agency was a good fit. But it was very nerve-wracking because I saw that they were like a big agency. They had all these artists that they are representing, including people that I look up to, you know, and I was thinking, what if I'm just gonna like be left at the bottom and there'll be no work for me at all? So, and I'm very grateful that I had this idea. I was like, let me just like message a couple of the artists that are under the umbrella, I guess, and got some very straightforward feedback that like, look, sometimes you're gonna get a period where you're busier than you could ever imagine. You might even have to turn things down. And there might be times where for like a couple months there's no work coming in and you just have to understand that you have to ride that out. But in those times where there's nothing, maybe rework the portfolio. And from this, I just learned that it's important to understand that there's seasons, there's all sorts of dips and flows, and it can't help. I mean, it can't hurt to rework the skill set that you have. Come up with new techniques, new styles, new focuses that you might have, etc. Yeah. So basically signed to the Bright Agency. These are just some illustrations that I've actually done recently that are a style that I don't do normally, but I just thought I'd share it with you guys. Obviously, it's like dinosaurs and rabbits, basically for young kids. And in the industry of picture book illustration, it's, I think overwhelmingly, the agents and the art directors and all of those guys, they're looking for work that expresses texture, that can sort of communicate a type of texture and depth of feel. And even though some people can draw really beautiful pictures, it's more important that they can see that there's some sort of texture and some sort of depth that makes it feel like it wasn't too computerized, if that makes sense. I think that is just because of the way that children receive books. Texture just like it hits something in the brain if they can see that there's some sort of like tactile element to the work. Okay, I'm going to talk about some of the work that I've done in South Africa specifically. This is a book called Making Friends with Feelings, which I'm very proud of, written by Soela, and it's published by New Africa Books. It's a book about a kid who is afraid of crying and what that means, because he gets trouble at school and then he comes home and he feels like, why am I feeling like overwhelmingly like sad, like bad about myself, and like why am I crying? And we created this, or rather, I had to come up with how the imaginary friend, whose name is Lesedi, was going to obviously be characterized. And I thought, okay, look, let me just keep it simple. What does Lesedi mean? And I found that I think in some cases it means light. And I was like, okay, cool. There's an interesting way that we could tie in light with a light bulb. And the light bulb, of course, is a symbol for an idea. And this idea, again, it communicates that this kid is talking to himself, because it's an idea that's in his own head. And I really had fun coming up with that. And I just thought it would be cute to have like this guy, singing with them, having fun with him, but also being there for him when he's really, really upset. And again, one of the things that I snuck into the spreads that I was very proud of was having this mirror where we see that Lesedi isn't actually there. And I felt like, okay, I was like, let me leave this nugget over here. when the kid that has this book in like 6-7 years will come back and be like, wait, but this guy forgot to, that's what I'm hoping for. Most of the work that I do, I hope that there'll be some sort of thing that's experienced at the initial turn, and then maybe when you're moving house 15 years later, you pick up this book and you're like, oh, yeah, I remember this, and then it means something completely different now. Maybe not completely different, but just like there's more layers. And then through the Bright Agency, I got to work on some beautiful projects. This is Science is Lit, which is written by Big Manny, who's like a TikTok sensation. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's the guy who does science, and he speaks like he's Yeah, from the street. But Manny's really cool. He's like he studied science, and he is just like in academia, and he's also a school teacher now. He's a qualified teacher, but he just like decided to make these videos explaining scientific method and experiments, household experiments that you could do. On TikTok during the pandemic, and then he blew up, and now he's got like a whole different career as a presenter, and he also does ads with Adidas, and he does, yeah, all sorts of really cool things. But like, yeah, we've done 2 books so far, and this book was really fun because I got to actually like read through some of his scientific, I guess, experiments and some of his insights, and I felt like I got to learn some science and get paid for it, so that was quite nice. But yeah, this was a really fun book, and like I really had a good time just like working on the cover, and I felt like some part of the graphic design knowledge that I'd learned at ADA as well was really, yeah, it really came through for me here. Just specifically with like the color, with the colors. And then of course worked on the Bob Marley book, which was a really like emotional one for me, because while growing up, I went to a boarding school called Prestige College in between Pretoria and Mafeking. They were a big athletic school. And on the journeys to and from the hostel, it was a boarding school. On the journeys to and from the hostel, it would be like a 45-minute journey, and my mom and I would listen to Bob Marley, specifically Exodus, the album. Exodus. Yeah, fantastic album, and like I've just always like loved Bob Marley, specifically from those days, being driven to school, and it's like a nice open road, listening to nice reggae grooves. It's fantastic. So I've always, this guy has always been like important to me, and just working on this project was really, really a pleasure and an honor, because I've always wanted to work on this brand, I guess, Little People, Big Dreams, and Maria is like she's one of those people who's the writer. She also does lots of research and provides with lots of research, lots of sources, which is really impressive to see, that she's not just like saying, okay, let me just make a book about this guy. Let me just check Wikipedia. She has all sorts of sources, which is cool. And it was really great to like go through the life of this person, but also knowing some other histories about Bob Marley that were omitted from the story, because truly it would be a bit horrific for children to go through. It was nice to like get some information about this guy, but also to know that I actually know a bit more. But that was just, I just felt cool that I knew a little bit more. But it was stuff that kids don't want to know. So with this book, I wanted to focus specifically on, again, with most of my books, I like to, if there's like a important figure, I like the idea of highlighting the community around them. And with this, just showing like how the Wailers, his friends, Peter Tosh and I'm forgetting the other guy's name, how their band just like went through different iterations, or first called themselves the Teenagers, and then the Wailing Rude Boys, and then obviously the Wailing Wailers, and then at that point they were, I think, like 18 or something, and they had a record that was going around. And there was just like lots of people around who obviously liked them and had known that these 3 boys are always going around trying to sing. And people helped them out, and they became, of course, legendary people. Okay, so Wrong is a book that I wrote and illustrated. It's a story that I've had in my head for a while. It's basically it's also published by New Africa Books. It's basically a story where I wanted to tell a story of a kid going to school and having their name mispronounced. And then having to be like, no, come on, my name is this. And then the teachers are like, let me just call you, and then insert whatever nickname they have. So here I wanted to have Pterodactyl over here. Her full name is Pterodactyl. Because I thought it would be fun to like just have it written out there for the kids. And she gets to the school and she's telling everyone, hey, I'm new to the school. The teachers are like, oh, we have a new student. Their name is... And it's fun to like read it to kids as well, because they'll be like, oh, what are you doing? And then she will be she's very bold through every class. She tells them, no, you're saying it wrong. And I thought it was really important to like have that because while growing up in school in Pretoria, there was so many instances of this happening, of like a kid whose name is Letlogonolo or Retabile or something like that. And the teachers are like, I can't even say this. Let me call you Reggie or something. And it's really like diminishing in a way that I think some people take it on and like it really like makes them feel like I should not have this name. Some people end up changing their names to appeal more fashionable for employment. And it's really unfair. And with this book, I wanted to basically, Pterodactyl goes on to struggle with all the classes. She eventually goes to speak to the principal and convinces him to say, okay, cool. Let's set up a thing where you guys have a class where you teach the teachers how to say your name. And then it basically ends like that, where they're like, okay, let's sound it out. Which I thought was fun, yeah. Okay, this one, Nafu Wants Food, is so far it's like my most important project. It's a graphic novel about a monster that steals everyone's food. While creating this, there was lots of things about this monster that was exactly me. So I was going through some interesting things here. Well, while coming up with this, it's basically like the story follows this guy called Nafu he just terrorizes this village I called it Mongo Village. I just chosen it. And it's a village of farmers. They're very peaceful. They're very chill. They reap incredible harvests all the time. But now Nafu's like just taking advantage of them, coming through, getting food, like ransacking their silo, and eventually he gets to a point where he's taken way too much, and then he's like, let me go find some food elsewhere. You guys start farming. I'll be back at the next harvest. So the story goes on like interesting journeys, which specifically the hook for me was I wanted to make this monster lose his limbs, basically have all the things that make him big and scary pop off, because he's been wandering the desert now and he doesn't find any other village to terrorize, and there's nobody out there who's gonna there's nobody out there for him to have the position as a tyrant or that sort of thing. So the emotional part of the story is that I wanted to explore the theme of the monsters that we have, I guess, just like emotional monsters, psychological monsters. If we keep feeding them, then they keep terrorizing us. But what happens if you don't feed them anymore? Maybe the claws fall off, maybe they starve, and then they can't harm you anymore. So I wanted to explore that through like a silly narrative. There's a part where now Nafu becomes like just like a little, like a blob like that. And then he has to engage in a race with this guy called Gundi. He's like a 3-legged green thing. And then Nafu becomes his 4th leg. Nafu becomes his 4th leg, and they go on a race, but now Nafu's head is constantly getting banged throughout like the whole thing. And he's like, I just wanted to have this guy who was once a giant, treating people like crap, now literally be a heel. And he's getting scraped on the ground, and he has to really like understand, okay, things can get this bad. Maybe I shouldn't be so greedy, I guess. And of course that story revealed lots of things for me that I don't know if any of you guys have ever written a story or created a character, but there's some wonderful things that happen where you end up revealing things about yourself that I think you could never have pointed out. So if any of you have like a story to write, please write a story. We all have a cool story to tell, even if it's silly. So again, why sowing seeds is a must. I feel like, the young people, younger people, I guess. There's lots of. Have I destroyed everything? Okay. Yeah, I feel like younger people get into their adulthood and now they want to be adults and do all sorts of cool things and stand on their own feet. But they want to be creative and there's lots of like, all the information about the work in the creative field is either, mystified or maybe it's just, people treat it like, yeah, you're just going to paint pictures, who cares? You're just going to draw a little heart. Some people don't take logo design seriously. Some people don't take overall graphic design seriously, usually parents. And granted, it's because you love your kids. You want them to make enough money because you know how much everything just relies on making more money than you need. And I feel like it's important as the people who are practicing in the creative field, of course, to find time to demystify and to detrivialize and like encourage the young people to be like, oh, you're good at doing that. It's really cool. You can keep working on this, keep nurturing this, and somewhere you'll find a market somewhere where you can exploit the skill that you have and be able to, to practice your design. Okay, so Book Dash. I don't know if you guys know about Book Dash. Julia knows a lot about Book Dash. It's a fantastic organization that produces picture books for kids. They've got a mission where they want to produce, of course, millions and millions and have as many children across South Africa, across the world really, to have at least 100, to have at least 100 picture books in their, I guess, in their library before the age of 10. 5. Yeah, before the age of 5. And I really, when I heard about Book Dash, I was like, oh, I have to take part. It's basically like an event where across 12 hours in one day, a gathering of illustrators and writers and designers and editors come together. And the books have been written previously and chosen, but then we get together in like a nice little, I guess, incubator and come up with, and like produce the books within 12 hours. And then at the end of the day, we look at the books like in this form in a presentation, and we laugh and we go on, and then we feel proud of ourselves. And maybe like months later, they get printed out, and we get regular reports of the feedback that we're getting for the books, like how many times they've been printed, how many times they've been published, printed and translated. And sometimes you get some fan art randomly. I sometimes get fan art, which is fantastic sometimes. And also photos of just like the impact that these books are making in these kids' lives, specifically for kids who are from a disadvantaged background and they don't have access to a library or just money for recreational reading, It's really good that Book Dash provides work that can be, through a Creative Commons license, work that can be just given freely. People can like make a donation and then just like have like a print run done, and then the books just get distributed to schools or libraries or just communities. And I'm happy to say that I've participated in like 4 of them. Tomorrow I'm going for another one. That's at the waterfront. So very excited. I'm going to take a nice proper rest today and then be ready for that, yeah. Also on the topic of, I guess, sowing seeds, I have a podcast which has not been updated in many months. But myself and Kate Hilson, who was my lecturer at ADA a few years back, we created this podcast, obviously after the pandemic. We created this podcast. It's a podcast for creatives, and we basically, again, demystify and offer advice on the creative industry through just talking about various topics that we go through and our journeys as creative people. Kate was specifically an art director, graphic designer, web designer, all that stuff, lecturer as well. And I would just obviously just, give feedback on we talk about the various challenges we've gone through, the tips we've learned along the way, and Yeah, and what else? And we had like a series on the podcast called Mythbusters, where we'd talk about a bunch of like things that people would ask us and say, look, that's not true. You can just do this. You can get information from here. You can go get a bursary from here. I mean, you can apply for a bursary. You can't just go get a bursary. And yeah, the podcast did for us really well because we got some good feedback from people. We didn't ever get up to a point where we were monetizable, but it was still really good to like produce this and get feedback from people and say, yeah, I listen to this every now and then. Thank you for producing this. Where's the next episode, etc. But yeah, we haven't made another episode in the last year and a half, and I think, but it's still available on Spotify and Google Podcasts. And I think it was really important for us to produce this because like we could just have some sort of resource online that we could point some young people to and say, look, you can check this out. There might be something that gives you clarity. Yeah. And then also, of course, I host comic book art workshops. And I've done a few like at the Kingsmead Book Fair in Johannesburg. I've done some in Fishhook Library and also at the Otto Foundation in Cape Town. So now and with these workshops, we just like, I try and get these kids to just come up with a silly character, come up with a quick story, tell whatever story that comes up to them. And there's no pressure. Try to be as silly and funny as you can. And again, with this, it's fun to watch these young people be very confused and be like, what's this guy telling me to do? He's telling me that I don't have to worry about spelling. I don't have to worry about the shape being a proper shape. But there'll always be like a couple that start off and understand and say, okay, cool, this guy's saying we can do whatever. And then they play around. And then to watch the kids like through the hour and a half time that it takes, watch them build their confidence and become proud of what they've done. It's really like a heartwarming thing. Just like to see the encouragement that they end up having for themselves. The best version of this workshop is when the parents are around as well, because then I think the parents will also see me encourage the kid, and then they'll see the kid like their back goes up straight, and they're like, yeah, I did something really cool, and like that connection I think is very important because. Sometimes parents will just be like, yeah, just draw the thing, it's fine. Let's spend our Saturday here while your mom is doing this, and then we'll pick up and go home, and they don't care. But then there's a few moments where I can see that this parent is like, okay, this is actually quite cool for them, that I can see that my kid is engaging and producing something, you know? So with Otto Foundation, we are producing a book that we're trying to put in the Otto Foundation libraries. It's basically like I ran like a 10-week workshop, I guess, tour of their libraries. And like there was a bunch of grade 6s, grade 4s, grade 3s that came through. And we produced like many comics. So a lot of them look like this. And some, the ones that we've picked are the ones that have color in them, just so that we can have something that looks like it's been produced. But we still kept all of these. And they'll basically come up with like a silly character and then tell a story of some sort. Which was also like, it was really like fun just to like read some of their stories. There was one kid who came up with a character that was a flying lipstick with big lips and huge wings. But now her story was like the lipstick was like sort of flying and like narrating or like contemplating something. And this lipstick was saying, I wish I could just like fly away because people keep using me to make themselves look good. And this girl was like, I think grade 6 maybe. And I noticed that she was a bit sad when she came through. But like, there was something like, there's countless brilliant ideas that come through that these kids just like knock out. And they don't know that they've got these brilliant ideas, these brilliant ways that they can communicate such a simple, effective, powerful idea. And that's why with this workshop, I'm trying my best to like get us to have the books done. We have them in the libraries so that then these kids can be able to say, yeah, I'm actually a part of literature now. Like my work is in the library, and you can bring your parents, bring your friends, and say, look, this is this thing that I did, and I did it like I did it in 1 hour, and it's basically award-winning level. And it really brings, it warms my heart to be able to be part of that. So I've been doing this with the Otto Foundation. I've regularly visiting their libraries that they build through donations and partners and raising capital through all sorts of events. And they're doing some really good work out at District 6. And I'm very happy to be, I guess, like aligned with them when trying to like come up with ways to increase literacy, increase an interest, increase some sort of, create like a future market of like readers and writers, that's all I have to show you, but I hope you guys get it.